She thought it was just a birthday surprise for an old veteran, but that one note would change everything. Overnight, the world fell in love with her voice, and the internet couldn't get enough. But fame came with enemies on old betrayal, and a threat to take away the one thing she couldn't lose. Behind the applause was a secret that could destroy it all, and someone from her past was ready to use it. Can a mother's song save her family when the truth finally comes out? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The pale glow of pre-dawn painted streaks across the empty parking lot as Maya Brooks hurried toward Sunrise Diner. Her breath formed small clouds in the chilly morning air, and her worn sneakers crunched against the gravel. The familiar shape of the diner, with its chrome trim and neon sign, stood like a beacon of warmth against the dark sky. Inside, the aroma of fresh coffee wrapped around her like a comforting blanket. Ruth Delgado, already busy behind the counter, looked up with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "There's my songbird," Ruth called out, her silver-streaked hair tucked neatly beneath a hairnet. "I was starting to wonder if you'd overslept." Maya shook her head, reaching for her apron from the hook. "Not me. Just had to make sure Ellie laid out her clothes for school. That girl would wear her soccer uniform every day if I let her." The vinyl seats gleamed from Ruth's early morning cleaning, and the chrome surfaces sparkled under the fluorescent lights. Maya tied her apron strings twice to make sure they'd hold through her shift, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency. "How's she doing with that science project?" Ruth asked, measuring coffee grounds into the industrial-sized maker. "Up late last night gluing cotton balls onto her cloud formation poster." Maya smiled, remembering Ellie's determined expression as she worked. "I told her it was bedtime, but you know how she gets when she's focused on something." Maya walked to the specials board, picking up the chalk. Her mind wandered to the stack of bills waiting at home on her kitchen table. The electricity notice had come in yellow this time, a warning she couldn't ignore. She wrote, "Monday special country fried steak with gravy, 8.99 in her neatest handwriting, adding a little star for decoration." "You're thinking too hard again," Ruth observed, placing a steaming mug of coffee on the counter. "I can see those worry lines from here." Maya wrapped her hands around the warm mug, grateful for both the caffeine and Ruth's motherly concern. "Just doing math in my head. Ellie's growing so fast, seems like I'm buying new shoes every other month. That girl's going to be tall like her mama." Ruth nodded, beginning to slice tomatoes for the day's preparations. "Speaking of growing, did you hear who's coming in for breakfast today?" Maya moved to help with the prep work, falling into their comfortable morning routine. "Who?" "Mr. Holloway." Ruth's face lit up. "It's his 90th birthday today. Can you believe it? Still drives himself here every Monday morning, regular as clockwork." 90? Maya paused in arranging coffee cups. "I remember when he used to bring his wife in. She always ordered blueberry pancakes with extra butter," they said in unison, sharing a knowing look. The morning light grew stronger outside as they worked, transforming the windows from black mirrors into clear panes. Maya flipped the closed sign to open, watching as the first rays of sunlight caught the letters. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket, a text from Mrs. Martinez next door. "Ellie's up and eating breakfast. Don't worry." Maya sent back a quick heart emoji, thankful for neighbors who helped watch out for her daughter before school. As she refilled the napkin dispensers, Maya hummed quietly to herself, an old habit she couldn't break. The tune was "His Eye is on the Sparrow," one of her grandmother's favorites. The hymn always reminded her of Sunday mornings in church, holding her grandmother's hand, feeling the vibrations of the choir through the wooden pews. "You know," Ruth said, pausing in her work, "we should do something special for Mr. Holloway's birthday. 90 years, that's something to celebrate." Maya looked up from the napkins. "What did you have in mind?" Ruth's eyes twinkled. "Well, I was thinking you could sing for him. That hymn you're humming right now would be perfect. He always did love the old gospel songs." "Oh, Ruth, I don't know." Maya felt her cheeks warm. She sang at church sometimes, yes, but the diner was different. These were her customers, people she served eggs and coffee to every day. "Don't you—" "Oh, Ruth me," the older woman said firmly. "That voice of yours is a gift. Besides, you know how much it would mean to him. Remember how he was after Mrs. Holloway passed? Your singing at the church fundraiser last month was the first time I saw him really smile in weeks." Maya wiped her hands on her apron, considering Mr. Holloway had been coming to the diner longer than she'd been alive. He still sat in the same booth every time, ordered the same breakfast, and left the same generous tip even though she knew he lived on a fixed income. "Fine," she agreed with a small laugh. "But only because it's Mr. Holloway, and because you won't let me hear the end of it if I don't." "That's my girl," Ruth beamed, checking the clock. "He'll be here just before the rush starts. Always times it perfect, that man." Maya moved to check the coffee urns again, her mind already going over the words to the hymn. The morning routine continued around her, the clatter of plates, the hiss of the grill heating up, the chime of the door as the first early customers arrived. Through it all, she could feel the slow build of nervous energy in her stomach, but also a warm certainty that singing for Mr. Holloway was the right thing to do. The sun rose fully outside, washing the diner in golden light. Maya could see Ellie through the window now, walking to the bus stop with her oversized backpack and cloud formation poster. Her daughter turned and waved, and Maya waved back, feeling that familiar surge of love and pride. "Here comes trouble," Ruth announced, nodding toward the door. Mr. Holloway's old blue Buick was pulling into its usual spot, right under the diner's sign. "You ready?" Maya straightened her apron and took a deep breath. "Ready as I'll ever be." The morning rush had settled into its usual rhythm at Sunrise Diner. Maya moved between tables with practiced ease, refilling coffee cups and delivering plates of golden hash browns and fluffy pancakes. The bell above the door chimed, and she looked up to see Mr. Holloway making his way in, supported by his wooden cane and flanked by 2 other veterans from his weekly coffee group. "Well, if it isn't the birthday boy himself," Ruth called out from behind the counter, her voice carrying across the diner. The regulars turned and smiled, many calling out their own greetings to the elderly veteran. Mr. Holloway's weathered face broke into a wide grin as he made his way to his usual booth. His crisp plaid shirt and neatly pressed slacks showed the military precision that hadn't left him even after all these years. At 90, he still carried himself with dignity, though his steps were slower now. Maya noticed a well-dressed man sitting at the counter, speaking quietly into his phone about marketing strategies and quarterly projections. His expensive suit looked out of place among the usual work shirts and casual wear of their regular customers. "Order up," the cook's voice rang out, and Maya hurried to grab her waiting plates. As she served them, she heard Ruth's voice calling her name. "Maya, honey, come here a minute." Ruth waved her over to Mr. Holloway's table. The elderly veteran sat surrounded by his friends, a slice of Ruth's famous apple pie in front of him with a single candle stuck in it. Maya's stomach did a little flip. She knew that look in Ruth's eyes. "Oh no, Ruth, please." "Yes, indeed," Ruth said firmly, her hands on her hips. "Mr. Holloway has been coming here for 30 years, and it's his 90th birthday. He specifically requested you sing for him." Mr. Holloway looked up at Maya with kind eyes. "I heard you last Easter at the church social, your voice. It reminded me of my late wife. She used to sing 'His Eye is on the Sparrow' in the choir." Maya felt her cheeks warm. The diner had grown quieter, and she could feel eyes turning toward their corner. At the counter, the businessman in the suit paused his phone call, his attention drawn to the scene unfolding. I haven't practiced," Maya stammered, but Ruth just smiled and squeezed her shoulder. "Honey, when God gives you a gift like yours, you don't need practice. Just sing it like you do in church." Maya looked around at the expectant faces. Mr. Holloway's eyes held such hope, and she couldn't bear to disappoint him. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes and began to sing. The first note floated soft and clear through the diner. Maya's voice carried the old hymn with a gentle power that seemed to fill every corner of the room. The clatter of dishes ceased. Conversations fell silent. Even the sizzle of the grill seemed to quiet down. She sang of fear and hope, of faith and comfort, each word carrying the weight of generations who had found solace in these lyrics. Her voice soared with the melody, rich and warm like honey in sunlight. At the counter, the businessman in the suit had completely forgotten his phone call. He set his phone down slowly, his eyes fixed on Maya, something deep and personal flickering across his face. Mr. Holloway's eyes glistened with tears, and he reached for Maya's hand as she sang. She squeezed it gently, her voice growing stronger, more confident. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow across the scene. As the last note faded into silence, the diner remained still for a moment, as if held in a spell. Then Mr. Holloway pulled out his handkerchief and dabbed at his eyes. "Just like Sarah used to sing it," he whispered. The spell broke as applause erupted throughout the diner. Maya felt her face flush, and she tried to step back toward the kitchen. But before she could move, the businessman from the counter stood up. His phone lay forgotten beside his half-empty coffee cup. He approached Maya with purpose, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Miss Brooks," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a business card. "My name is Daniel Hart. I'm the CEO of Heartline Records." He paused, seeming to gather himself. "And I'd like to offer you a record deal right here, right now." The diner erupted in applause, the sound bouncing off the worn vinyl booths and chrome fixtures. Maya's hands trembled as she gripped her serving tray against her chest, trying to steady her racing heart. The well-dressed stranger, Daniel Hart, stood before her with a gentle smile, his business card extended between two fingers. I don't understand," Maya managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "A record deal? Here?" Daniel loosened his tie slightly and gestured to an empty booth. "Please, sit with me for a moment. Let me explain everything." Ruth appeared at Maya's side, gently taking the tray from her hands. "Go on, honey. I'll cover your tables." She gave Maya a gentle push toward the booth. Maya slid into the seat, smoothing her apron nervously. The vinyl cushion squeaked beneath her as she shifted. Daniel sat across from her, placing his phone face down on the table, a gesture that made Maya feel like she had his complete attention. "What you just did with that hymn," Daniel began, his voice warm and professional. "That's the kind of authentic soul we're looking for at Heartline Records. No pretense, no overproduction, just pure, honest emotion." Maya glanced around the diner, where customers were trying their best to pretend they weren't listening to every word. Mr. Holloway beamed at her from his booth, giving her a small salute with his coffee cup. "The deal would be straightforward," Daniel continued, pulling out a small leather notebook. "We'd provide studio time with our best producers, professional marketing, and distribution through our main channels." He paused, making sure Maya was following. "And there would be a signing bonus? A substantial one." Maya's throat felt dry. How substantial? Daniel wrote a number on a page of his notebook and turned it toward her. Maya's eyes widened, and she felt her hands begin to shake again. That amount would cover her back rent and then some. Enough to get ahead on bills, maybe even start a small college fund for Ellie. The bell above the diner door chimed, and Maya looked up to see Ellie bursting in, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. The 12-year-old's face was flushed from running, her braids swinging as she rushed to the booth. Mom! Mrs. Hart showed everyone the video in class. You're all over social media." Ellie's eyes were bright with excitement as she pulled out her tablet. "Look!" Maya leaned over to see the screen, where a slightly shaky video showed her singing to Mr. Holloway. The view count was already in the thousands. Ruth must have filmed it without her noticing. "Your daughter?" Daniel asked, his smile warming further. Maya nodded, pulling Ellie close to her side. "This is Ellie. She's my everything." "Nice to meet you, Ellie," Daniel said, extending his hand to her. "I was just telling your mom about an opportunity to share her gift with a much bigger audience." Ellie's eyes grew wide as she looked between Daniel and her mother. "Are you going to be famous, Mom?" Maya laughed nervously, running her fingers through her daughter's braids. "I don't know about famous, baby. Mr. Hart here is just talking about recording some songs." "Professional recordings," Daniel corrected gently. "With proper distribution, marketing support, and the full backing of Heartline Records." He pulled out several more business cards, placing them on the table. "Take these. Call our main office to verify everything I'm saying. Talk to a lawyer if you'd like, We encourage that. We can have contracts drawn up by the end of the week." Ruth appeared again, coffee pot in hand. She topped off Daniel's cup and gave Maya a meaningful look. "Maya, can I borrow you for a minute?" Maya squeezed Ellie's shoulder and slid out of the booth. "Excuse me for just a moment," she said to Daniel, following Ruth to the counter. Behind the shelter of the coffee machines, Ruth turned to face her. The older woman's face was serious, her usually cheerful expression replaced with concern. "Maya, honey, this is big. Really big. Promise me you'll pray about this before you sign anything." Maya nodded, glancing back at the booth where Ellie was showing Daniel something on her tablet, both of them laughing. "Of course I will, Ruth. I promise." "I mean it," Ruth insisted, gripping Maya's hand. "God gave you that voice for a reason, but you need to be sure this is His timing, His path." "I know," Maya said softly. But she couldn't quite suppress the thrill that ran through her chest as she watched Daniel write something else in his notebook, probably another detail about the deal that could change her life forever. Through the diner's windows, the morning sun had risen fully now, casting a golden glow across the worn linoleum floor. It felt like a sign, like a new dawn breaking over her life. Ruth squeezed her hand one more time before releasing it. "Just remember, pray first, sign later." Maya nodded again, but her heart was already soaring with possibilities. After years of juggling bills, scraping by on tips, and wondering if she'd ever be able to give Ellie the life she deserved, it felt like God had finally opened a door. The trick would be walking through it with wisdom instead of just running headlong into whatever lay ahead. Maya's tiny apartment felt different that evening, as if the walls themselves were humming with possibility. The familiar scent of microwaved leftovers mixed with the lavender air freshener she used to mask the building's musty smell. But even that couldn't dampen her spirits. She sat on their worn beige couch, Daniel Hart's business card still warm in her pocket, while Ellie sprawled on the carpet with her tablet. "Mom, can I please post the video? Pretty please?" Ellie looked up at her with those big brown eyes that always made Maya's resolve crumble. "Just on my page. It's only got like 50 followers anyway." Maya kicked off her waitress shoes, flexing her tired feet. "I don't know, baby, that feels kind of forward." "But Mr. Hart already wants to sign you, and people should hear you sing." Ellie sat up, clutching the tablet to her chest. "Mrs. Hart says sharing our gifts is like letting our light shine." "Using my own words against me now?" Maya chuckled, thinking of all the times she'd encouraged Ellie with similar phrases. The couch cushions sagged as she leaned back, her body heavy with exhaustion from the long shift. "Okay, fine. But just the video, no extra commentary." Ellie's fingers flew across the screen, her face illuminated by its glow. "Done! And I'm putting nice hashtags, like inspirational and amazing, Mom." "You're something else, you know that?" Maya smiled, watching her daughter's excitement. The events of the day felt surreal. The singing, Daniel Hart's offer, the number he'd written in that notebook. It was enough money to make her dizzy just thinking about it. The wall clock ticked steadily as they sat together, Ellie refreshing her screen every few minutes. Maya's eyes grew heavy as she listened to her daughter's running commentary. 10 views already. Oh wait, 20 now." Ellie bounced in place. Someone commented, "Gorgeous voice." "See, Mom?" Maya murmured, her head drooping against the couch arm. The familiar sound of cars passing on the street below mixed with Ellie's excited whispers. 50 views, and someone shared it." Ellie's voice seemed to come from farther away, as Maya drifted off, her last conscious thought, a prayer of gratitude for this strange, wonderful day. Sleep came easily, deep and dreamless, until Ellie's voice cut through the morning light, streaming through their thin curtains. Mom, wake up!" Ellie shook her shoulder gently. "You have to see this." Maya blinked, her neck stiff from sleeping on the couch. She dozed off in her diner uniform, the events of yesterday flooding back as she sat up. "What time is it?" 6:30, but look!" Ellie thrust the tablet into her hands. "The video went viral." Maya stared at the screen, her eyes widening as she took in the numbers. Thousands of views, hundreds of shares. Comments filled the screen, scrolling past faster than she could read them. "Voice of an angel," Ellie read aloud, bouncing on the couch cushion next to her. "This is what America needs right now. Beautiful moment between generations." She paused, her excitement dimming slightly. "There are some mean ones too, but I'm not reading those." Maya's heart sank as she caught glimpses of the negative comments. Ugly words about race, sneering remarks about attention-seeking. She quickly scrolled past them, focusing instead on the overwhelming positive response. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, an unknown number lighting up the screen. With trembling fingers, she answered. "Maya? It's Daniel Hart." His voice carried the same warm authority as yesterday. "Have you seen what's happening online?" Yes, just now." Maya watched as Ellie continued to scroll through comments, her daughter's expression a mix of pride and protective anger. "This is exactly what I was talking about. Authentic connection, raw emotion. People are hungry for this kind of genuine moment." Daniel paused. "But we need to move quickly. This kind of momentum is precious, and timing is everything in this business." Maya touched the worn fabric of her uniform, the reality of her daily life, a stark contrast to the possibilities Daniel offered. "How quickly?" "I can have contracts drafted by this afternoon. Our legal team will ensure everything's fair and transparent." His voice softened. "Maya, this is your moment. The universe doesn't often give second chances." Ellie looked up at her mother, eyes bright with hope and excitement. On the tablet screen, the view count continued to climb, each number representing someone who'd been touched by her voice, the voice her grandmother had always said was a gift from God himself. "Can I have an hour to pray about it?" Maya asked, her hand finding Ellie's and squeezing gently. "Of course," Daniel replied. "But please don't wait too long. I've seen too many beautiful opportunities slip away because people were afraid to take that first step." After hanging up, Maya sat in silence, watching the morning sun paint patterns on their small living room wall. The video played quietly on Ellie's tablet, her own voice singing "His Eye is on the Sparrow." Mr. Holloway's weathered face shining with tears, the diverse crowd of the diner united in that sacred moment. "I believe in you, Mom," Ellie whispered, leaning her head against Maya's shoulder. "And so does everyone else now." The lunch crowd had thinned at Sunrise Diner, leaving only a few regulars nursing their coffee cups. Sunlight streamed through the windows, making the chrome fixtures gleam and casting long shadows across the checkered floor. Maya sat in a corner booth across from Daniel Hart, her hands wrapped around a cooling mug of tea. Daniel spread several papers across the Formica tabletop, his suit jacket draped neatly over the seat beside him. "The terms are standard for a new artist," he explained, his voice gentle but professional. "We're offering a 2-album deal with Heartline Records, plus options for 2 more if things go well." Maya nodded, trying to focus on the numbers and clauses before her. The signing bonus alone would cover 6 months of rent. "And Ellie, you're sure it's okay if she travels with me?" "Of course," Daniel smiled warmly. "Family comes first at Heartline. We'll make sure your tour schedule works around her school breaks." Ruth passed by, refilling their drinks without being asked. She gave Maya an encouraging wink before moving on to other tables. "Now," Daniel continued, pulling out a silver pen from his breast pocket, "if you're comfortable with everything, we can make this official." He indicated a dotted line at the bottom of the contract. Maya's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the pen. After years of singing only in church and at the diner, after all those nights wondering if she'd ever make something more of herself for Ellie's sake, here was her chance. The bell above the diner door chimed. Well, 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 if it isn't my favorite songbird. Maya's blood ran cold. She knew that voice, smooth as honey but with a bitter aftertaste. She looked up to see Trevor Kincaid sauntering toward their booth, his leather jacket creased and his salt and pepper hair slicked back. He still had that same predatory smile she remembered from her teenage years. "Trevor," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" Daniel straightened, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. "Can we help you?" Trevor pulled up a chair from a nearby table, spinning it around and straddling it backward. "Oh, I'm just here to protect my investment." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document, yellow with age and frayed at the edges. "You see, Maya and I already have an arrangement." Maya's stomach lurched as Trevor smoothed the paper on the table. She recognized it immediately. The contract she'd signed at 19. Stars in her eyes and dreams of Nashville in her heart. The contract she thought had died along with those dreams when she got pregnant with Ellie. That was years ago, Maya protested, her voice stronger now. Nothing ever came of it. Doesn't matter, sugar. Trevor's smile widened. Contract still binding. Article 3, Paragraph 2. I maintain exclusive rights to manage your music career for 10 years from first commercial performance. He tapped the paper with one manicured finger. By my count, we've still got some time. Daniel picked up the contract, scanning it with narrowed eyes. This appears to be a standard management agreement, but surely after such a long period of inactivity. The law's the law, Trevor cut in. And I've kept this contract active with all the proper filings. He turned to Maya, his voice dripping with false concern. I'm hurt you didn't come to me first, Maya. After all we've been through. Maya's hands clenched in her lap. All we've been through? You disappeared the moment things got tough. When I needed help? Water under the bridge, Trevor waved dismissively. What matters is the present, and right now, any deal you make goes through me. He glanced at Daniel's paperwork. I'm thinking a 60-40 split would be fair. In my favor, of course. The diner seemed to shrink around them. Maya could feel Ruth's worried gaze from behind the counter, could sense the few remaining customers trying not to stare. This is ridiculous, Daniel said, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. We'll have our legal team review. Review all you want. Trevor stood, straightening his jacket. But Maya doesn't sign anything without my approval. He smiled down at her, and Maya felt like that naive teenager all over again. Unless you want to spend your singing money on court fees instead of that little girl of yours. Maya's heart stopped. How do you know about Ellie? Small town, big ears. Trevor shrugged, but there was something calculated in his casual tone. Sweet kid. Would be a shame if all this industry drama affected her. Stability. The threat hung in the air, like smoke. Maya felt sick. Trevor collected his contract from the table, folding it carefully. Think it over, Songbird. But not too long. Opportunities like this don't come around every day. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Daniel? Next time you want to sign one of my clients, call my office first. Save everyone some trouble. The bell chimed again as Trevor left, leaving behind the scent of expensive cologne and something darker. Maya stared at her hands, now trembling visibly on the table. Ruth appeared at the booth, coffee pot forgotten. That man, she muttered, glaring at Trevor's retreating figure through the window. Smells like trouble. Maya knelt beside her bed that evening, her worn Bible open before her. The street lamp outside cast a soft glow through the thin curtains, barely illuminating the small bedroom she'd made as cozy as possible on a waitress's salary. Her hands were clasped tightly, knuckles white with tension. Lord, I need your guidance more than ever, she whispered, her voice trembling. The weight of the day's events pressed heavily on her shoulders, Daniel's offer, Trevor's threats, and the viral video that had turned her simple life upside down. Down the hall, she could hear Ellie getting ready for bed, humming His Eye is on the Sparrow, the very song that had started all this. The sound made Maya's heart squeeze with both love and worry. Everything she did, every decision she made, had to be for her daughter first. A gentle knock interrupted her prayers. Mama, can I come in? Of course, baby. Maya sat back on her heels as Ellie padded into the room in her favorite pajamas, the ones with little music notes all over them. Ellie settled cross-legged on the carpet beside her mother. At 12, she was already showing signs of the young woman she would become, her eyes carrying wisdom beyond her years. I saw you praying. Are you worried about Mr. Hart's offer? Maya nodded, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind Ellie's ear. There's a lot to think about, especially after Trevor showed up today. I remember him, Ellie said, wrinkling her nose. He used to come to our old apartment, always talking about making it big. She paused, then added with conviction. But Mr. Hart seems different. Did you see how he looked when you were singing? Like he was hearing something special. Baby, this isn't just about singing anymore, Maya explained, shifting to sit beside her daughter. It's about contracts and lawyers and about using the gift God gave you," Ellie interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. "Remember what Pastor Wilson always says? Your talents are meant to serve." Maya stared at her daughter, struck by the simple truth in those words. Here she was, worrying about Trevor and contracts, when perhaps she should be focusing on something bigger. "You know what else?" Ellie continued, leaning against her mother's shoulder. "When you sing, especially those old hymns, people feel it. Like Mr. Holloway today. Did you see him crying? Good crying, I mean. That's got to be worth something." Maya wrapped an arm around her daughter, drawing strength from her presence. "When did you get so wise, Miss Ellie Brooks?" "Learned from the best," Ellie grinned, then grew serious. "Mama, I know you're worried about me, about us. But I think God gave you that voice for a reason. And maybe this is it." Maya felt tears prick at her corners of her eyes. She pulled Ellie closer, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. For several minutes, they sat in comfortable silence, the distant sound of traffic providing a gentle backdrop to their thoughts. Finally, Maya reached for her phone. "You're right, baby. About all of it." She pulled up Daniel's number, which he'd left earlier. "But if we're doing this, we're doing it our way." Ellie squeezed her hand as Maya pressed the call button. After 2 rings, Daniel's warm voice answered. "Maya, I was hoping to hear from you." "Mr. Hart." "Daniel, please." "Daniel." Maya took a deep breath, drawing courage from Ellie's presence. "I've been thinking about your offer, and I need to be clear about something before we move forward. I'm listening. I'm a mother first. That's not just what I do, it's who I am. If we do this, there can't be any attempt to hide Ellie or change my image to fit some marketing plan. I won't pretend to be something I'm not." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Maya's heart hammered in her chest. Then Daniel spoke, his voice filled with what sounded like respect. "Maya, do you know what first caught my attention in that video? It wasn't just your voice, though that's extraordinary. It was the way you sang that hymn like you were sharing your heart with everyone in that diner. That authenticity is exactly what we want at Heartline." Relief flooded through Maya. "So you understand?" "More than you know," Daniel replied. "I have the contract with me now. Could we meet at the diner? I know it's late, but—" "Ruth always stays late doing the books on Mondays," Maya said, already reaching for her shoes. "We'll be there in 15 minutes. After hanging up, she turned to find Ellie already holding out her mother's purse and jacket. "Come on, Mama, let's go make it official." The diner was quiet when they arrived. Just Ruth at the counter with her reading glasses perched on her nose, surrounded by receipt books. She looked up and smiled, unsurprised to see them. "I had a feeling you'd be back tonight." Daniel arrived moments later, briefcase in hand. They settled into the back booth, the same one where Maya had first learned to balance her checkbook years ago, where Ellie had done countless homework assignments, where Ruth had helped Maya plan her budget month after month. As Daniel laid out the contract, explaining each section with patience and clarity, Maya felt a deep sense of rightness settle over her. This booth, this diner, these people. It was fitting that her new beginning would start right here, surrounded by the love and support that had sustained her for so long. She signed her name with steady hands, Ellie and Ruth watching proudly. Daniel added his signature, then handed Maya her copy with a warm smile. "Welcome to Heartline Records, Maya Brooks." Hope bloomed in her chest, bright and warm as the sunrise that would soon paint the sky outside. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The morning sun streamed through the diner's windows as Maya refilled coffee cups, her steps lighter despite her lack of sleep. Regular customers kept stopping her, their faces bright with excitement. "There's our hometown star," Mrs. Peterson beamed, reaching out to squeeze Maya's hand. "I always knew that voice of yours was something special." "Thank you," Maya replied softly, warmth spreading through her chest. "But I'm still just me, your regular coffee-pouring friend." Ruth watched from behind the counter, her experienced eyes noting how Maya handled each interaction with grace. Some customers, though, weren't as supportive. Maya couldn't help but notice when Bill Jenkins, a longtime regular, muttered to his friend at the counter. "Sure got lucky, didn't she? One song and suddenly she thinks she's better than serving eggs and toast. Maya's hand trembled slightly as she poured his coffee, but she kept her voice steady. "Can I get you anything else, Mr. Jenkins?" He barely looked at her, waving her away with a grunt. During her break, Maya sat in the back booth with her phone, scrolling through the comments under Ellie's video. The view count had climbed even higher overnight, but among the praise were darker messages that made her stomach churn. Who does she think she is? Another wannabe using religion to get famous. Small-town waitress gets discovered? Yeah, right. Bet this was all staged. They'll let anyone make gospel music these days. The implications in that last comment stung particularly hard. Maya had grown up hearing similar whispers, subtle reminders that some people thought her skin color determined where she belonged, and it wasn't on a stage. The bell above the diner door chimed, and Maya looked up to see Mrs. Hart, the elderly African-American woman who'd been a pillar of their church community for decades. She made her way to Maya's booth with careful steps, her silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. "Mind if I join you, child?" she asked, though she was already sliding into the seat. "Of course not, Mrs. Hart." Maya quickly put her phone away, but not before the older woman caught the troubled look in her eyes. "I see you've been reading those comments," Mrs. Hart said, her voice gentle but firm. "Stop that right now. Those people hiding behind screens don't know your heart." Maya's voice caught. "I never wanted fame or attention. I just love to sing, especially hymns. They help people feel closer to God, you know. But now some are saying, I'm using faith for publicity." Mrs. Hart reached across the table and took Maya's hand. "Child, I've known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper. You've sung in our church choir every Sunday, even after double shifts here. You visited sick folks in the hospital just to sing and pray with them. Don't let anybody make you doubt your purpose." The diner door chimed again, and this time it was Sarah Miller, who ran the local Facebook community group. She hurried over, her face flushed with concern. "Maya, I'm so sorry. I've been trying to moderate the comments on the local page, but they keep coming. Some folks from outside town are stirring up trouble." Maya's phone buzzed with a notification. Another comment thread had exploded, this time questioning her ability to be a good mother while pursuing a music career. Someone had dug up old photos from before Ellie was born, when Maya had briefly sung at local bars, trying to make ends meet. "Look at her history," one comment read. "Is this really the kind of role model we want representing our town?" Maya's hands shook as she opened her laptop, which she'd brought to work on some emails during her break. The screen filled with more messages, some supportive, but others cutting deep into her insecurities. There were remarks about single mothers, about knowing your place, about traditional values. "They're saying I'm going to abandon Ellie for fame," Maya whispered, her voice breaking. "How could they think that? Everything I do is for her." Mrs. Hart's face hardened with remembered pain. "People said similar things to me when I opened my business back in '65. Said a woman like me should know better than to reach above my station. But you know what? My daughter grew up watching me prove them wrong. And now she's a doctor." Sarah pulled out her phone, determined. "I'm going to post a statement of support from the Business Association. We stand behind our own in this town." Ruth appeared with a fresh pot of coffee and 3 cups. "Most folks here love you, Maya. Don't let a few bitter voices drown out the good ones." Maya's phone lit up with a text from Daniel. "Don't read the comments. Focus on the music. That's what matters." But it was hard not to look. Hard not to see the ugliness that had been lurking beneath the surface of her small town's seemingly friendly facade. Another notification popped up. Someone had found her address and posted it in a comment thread before the moderators could remove it. Maya's hands trembled as she closed her laptop. The bell chimed once more, and this time it was Ellie, home from school. Her daughter took one look at her mother's face and understood immediately. Without a word, she wrapped her arms around Maya's shoulders. "They don't know you, Mama," Ellie said firmly, her young voice full of conviction. "They don't know how you pray for people who are mean to you, or how you helped Miss Johnson's family when they couldn't pay their bills. They don't know anything." Maya folded another shirt and tucked it carefully into the small blue suitcase spread open on her bed. Early morning light filtered through the worn curtains, casting a soft glow across the modest room she shared with Ellie. The familiar creaks of their apartment's floorboards echoed as her daughter bounced between her dresser and her own pink duffel bag. "Mama, Should I bring my sparkly shoes? Ellie held up a pair of glittery sneakers, her eyes bright with excitement. Maya smiled, remembering how they'd found those shoes at the thrift store last month. Sure, baby. But pack your comfortable ones too. We'll be doing a lot of walking in the city. The sound of a car horn drifted up from the street, 3 short beeps in the familiar pattern that could only be Ruth. Maya glanced at her phone. 6:45 a.m., right on time. That's Aunt Ruth, Ellie exclaimed, stuffing the shoes into her bag. Can I carry my backpack down? Of course, just double-check you've got everything. Maya zipped her suitcase and did one last scan of the room. Their toothbrushes were packed, clothes for 3 days, her folder of music sheets, and the contract from Daniel, now signed and safely tucked away. Ruth's ancient station wagon sat idling by the curb, its rusty blue paint catching the morning sun. The older woman stepped out, her silver hair neatly pinned back, wearing what Maya recognized as her special occasion blouse. They're my girls. Ruth opened her arms wide, and Ellie ran straight into them for a hug. Ready for your big adventure? Maya lifted their bags into the trunk, while Ruth fussed over Ellie's jacket zipper. As ready as we'll ever be, she answered, trying to keep her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. The drive to the train station was filled with Ruth's practical advice and Ellie's excited chatter about skyscrapers. Maya sat in the passenger seat, watching the familiar streets of their small town roll by. The hardware store, where Mr. A.T. Johnson always swept the sidewalk, the church with its white steeple reaching toward the sky, and finally, the small train station with its red brick walls and green wooden benches. Ruth pulled into a parking spot and turned off the engine. Now remember, she said, turning to face Maya. Daniel's sending someone to meet you at Union Station. Don't leave with anybody else, no matter what they say. Yes, ma'am. Maya nodded, touched by Ruth's maternal concern. And you, Ruth pointed at Ellie, stay close to your mama in those big city crowds. I will, Aunt Ruth, Ellie promised solemnly, though her legs were already bouncing with anticipation. They unloaded the bags onto a cart, and Ruth insisted on walking them to the platform. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of coffee from the station's small cafe. A few other early travelers waited on the benches, most in business attire with laptops balanced on their knees. Maya checked their tickets again, 2 seats in coach, car number 4. The paper felt surreal in her hands, like a golden ticket to a new life. She'd never taken the train to the city before. The expense had always been too much. Oh, Ruth suddenly dug into her large purse. Almost forgot. A little something for the journey. She pulled out a paper bag that smelled wonderfully of cinnamon. Your famous morning buns! Ellie clapped her hands. Can't let you start your big music career on an empty stomach, Ruth winked, but Maya saw the shimmer of tears in her eyes. The rumble of approaching train tracks vibrated through the platform. Maya's heart quickened as the silver cars came into view, slowing with a hiss of brakes. This is it, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Ruth pulled them both into a tight hug. You show them what real music sounds like, honey. Music that comes from the heart. Thank you, Ruth, for everything. Maya's voice cracked slightly. Without Ruth's encouragement all these years, she might never have kept singing at all. The conductor called out their destination and passengers began boarding. Maya shouldered her bag and took Ellie's hand. They found their seats easily, 2 spots by the window with plenty of room for their luggage in the overhead compartment. Ellie pressed her face against the glass, waving enthusiastically at Ruth on the platform. Maya waved too, watching as her friend, who'd become so much more than just her boss, grew smaller as the train began to move. The familiar sights of their town slipped past the window. The water tower with its faded blue paint, the old movie theater where she'd first dreamed of singing on a real stage, the river that gave their town its name. Maya sat back in her seat, feeling the steady rhythm of the rails beneath them. Ellie had already opened the bag of morning buns, the sweet smell filling their little corner of the train car. Here, Mama, she offered one to Maya with sticky fingers. Maya took it, remembering countless mornings at the diner when these same pastries had been her breakfast before a long shift. Now here she was, heading to a real recording studio, with a real contract in her bag. The reality of it all suddenly hit her. how far they'd come from those early days of struggling to make rent, of counting every penny, of wondering if she'd ever use her voice for more than singing happy birthday to diner customers. She looked out at the last edges of town fading into countryside, holding Ellie's small hand in hers. This wasn't just her dream anymore. It was a chance to build something better for both of them. She squeezed her daughter's hand gently, feeling more certain than ever about her decision to move forward with the record deal. The morning sun glinted off the glass and steel building that housed Heartline Records. Maya gripped Ellie's hand as they followed Daniel through the revolving doors, their shoes clicking against the polished marble floor. The lobby stretched upward for what seemed like forever, making Maya feel smaller than she already did in her simple sundress and denim jacket. "You doing okay?" Daniel asked, noticing Maya's wide-eyed expression. "Just taking it all in," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Ellie squeezed her hand, offering silent support. The elevator ride to the 15th floor was quiet, except for the soft hum of machinery. When the doors opened, they stepped into a hallway lined with gold and platinum records in gleaming frames. Daniel led them to a door marked Studio A. Inside, the control room hummed with life. Screens displayed complex sound waves, and dozens of knobs and sliders covered the mixing board. Through the glass partition, Maya could see the recording booth, intimate and warm, with wooden panels and soft lighting. A tall man, with silver-streaked dreadlocks, turned from the console. His face crinkled into a warm smile that made his eyes disappear behind laugh lines. "You must be Maya Brooks," he said, his voice deep and rich like molasses. "I'm James Carter." Maya recognized the name from gospel albums she'd grown up with. "It's an honor, Mr. Carter." "James, please." He crouched down to Ellie's eye level. "And who's this young lady?" "I'm Ellie," she answered confidently. "I'm Mama's biggest fan." James laughed. "Well, Ellie, would you like to be my special assistant today? You can help me watch these lights and tell me when your Mama's singing lights up the whole board." Ellie nodded enthusiastically, and Maya felt some of her tension ease. James gestured to a comfortable couch along the wall where Ellie could sit with her books and tablet. "I watched that diner video about 20 times, James said, turning back to Maya. "That's exactly the kind of authentic spirit we need to capture. No fancy production tricks, no auto-tune, just pure heart and soul." Maya's shoulders relaxed a little more. "Really? I was worried you might want to polish it up." "Polish dulls the natural shine," James said firmly. "You've got church in your voice, sister. That's not something we fix. It's something we celebrate." He led Maya into the recording booth, showing her how to position herself relative to the microphone. The headphones felt foreign on her ears, but the wooden walls reminded her of Sunday mornings in the choir loft. "Let's warm up with His Eye is on the Sparrow, since that's what brought us all here," James suggested through the talkback. "Just like you did it in the diner. Pretend you're singing for Mr. Holloway again." Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She thought of the veteran's weathered face, of Ruth's encouraging smile, of all the Sunday mornings when this song had lifted her spirit. The first notes came naturally, floating out like a prayer. Through the headphones, she heard James's gentle of approval. When she opened her eyes, she saw Ellie beaming through the glass and Daniel nodding with that same moved expression he'd worn in the diner. They worked through the morning, James offering subtle suggestions about breathing and phrasing but never trying to change her style. He shared stories about gospel greats he'd worked with, making Maya laugh and feel part of a larger tradition. During their lunch break, James played her some rough mixes. Maya was stunned to hear her own voice coming through the studio monitors, clear and strong, but with all the little catches and whispers that made it human. "That's what people connected with in that video," James explained, pointing to the sound waves on the screen. "See these little imperfections? That's where the spirit lives. That's what makes people believe every word you're singing." The afternoon session focused on River Town Hallelujah, a song Daniel had found that spoke to Maya's small-town roots. James added simple piano and organ accompaniment, but kept Maya's voice front and center. "One more take," he'd say gently when Maya faltered, "but only if you're feeling it. We're not making widgets here. We're capturing moments." By 5 o'clock, Maya's throat was tired, but her heart was full. James transferred the day's recordings onto a small USB drive, and handed it to her with a smile. "Take this home and listen," he said. "Really listen. What you'll hear is why we don't need to change a thing about your style. You're not trying to be anybody else, and that's exactly right." Maya held the tiny drive carefully, amazed that hours of work could fit in something so small. Ellie gathered her things, proudly showing Maya the notes she'd taken about which takes James had marked as golden. "You've got a good ear, little one," James told Ellie. "You should think about producing someday." "Can we come back tomorrow?" Ellie asked eagerly. James chuckled. "Your mama needs to rest that voice. But we'll see you next weekend. This is just the beginning." Maya leaned back in her chair at the hotel's cozy restaurant, grateful to be off her feet after the long day in the studio. The warm lighting and soft music created a peaceful atmosphere, quite different from the clinical feel of the recording booth. Across the table, Mrs. Praird, Alma Hart, stirred her tea with elegant precision, her silver hair catching the light like a crown. "So tell me, dear," Mrs. Hart said, her voice rich and warm like honey, "how did it feel stepping into that booth for the first time?" Maya smiled, watching Ellie devour her chocolate cake. "Honestly, my knees were shaking so bad, I thought the microphone would pick it up." Mrs. Hart laughed, a sound that made everyone around her want to join in. "Oh, I remember that feeling. First day I walked into my classroom in '63. My heels were clicking so loud against the floor I thought the whole school could hear my nerves." "You were a teacher?" Ellie perked up, momentarily forgetting her dessert. "Fourth grade." Mrs. Hart nodded, reaching for her purse. She pulled out a small, worn photo album. "Here's my first class." Maya and Ellie leaned in close. The black and white photograph showed a much younger Mrs. Hart, standing proud in front of a chalkboard, surrounded by children of different races. "That was the first integrated class in our district," Mrs. Hart explained, her finger tracing the faces in the photo. "Those children taught me more about courage than I ever taught them about arithmetic." "Was it scary?" Ellie asked, scooting her chair closer to Mrs. Hart. "Oh, child, it was terrifying," Mrs. Hart admitted, patting Ellie's hand. "But you know what my mama told me? She said, 'Alma, when God gives you a place to stand, you plant your feet and lift others up.' That's what teaching was for me, a place to stand." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. "That's beautiful, Mrs. Hart." "Please, call me Alma," she insisted. "And you, Maya Brooks, you've been given your place to stand too. That voice of yours, it's not just for making pretty sounds. It's for touching hearts, opening minds." The waiter appeared with fresh coffee, and Maya welcomed the moment to collect herself. Alma continued sharing stories as they sipped their drinks. Tales of organizing choir concerts that brought different churches together, of students who went on to become doctors and lawyers and teachers themselves. "I remember this one little girl, Sarah Jenkins," Alma said, showing them another photograph. "She had the sweetest voice, but she was so shy. We had a talent show coming up, and she wanted to sing so badly, but she was afraid of what some of the parents might say about a colored girl taking center stage." "What happened?" Ellie asked, completely engrossed. "Well, I told her about Marian Anderson, how she sang at the Lincoln Memorial when they wouldn't let her perform at Constitution Hall. I said, 'Sarah, sometimes singing isn't just about the music. It's about showing others what's possible.'" Maya nodded, understanding flowing through her. "Did she sing?" "She did," Alma beamed. "And you know what? The next year, we had 5 more children sign up for the choir who'd never dared before. That's how change happens, one voice at a time." Ellie started bouncing in her seat. "Mama, that's like you at the diner. Remember how quiet everyone got when you started singing? Even that mean lady who always complains about her toes stopped talking." They all laughed, and Alma reached over to squeeze Maya's hand. "Your daughter's right. Music has a way of making people listen, really listen. And when they're listening, that's when hearts can change." As the evening wore on, Ellie began sharing her favorite riddles with Alma, who played along with exaggerated confusion at each one. Okay, I've got another one," Ellie announced, stifling a yawn. "What has keys but no locks, space but no room, and you can enter but not go in?" Alma tapped her chin thoughtfully. "Now, that's a tricky one. Let me see. Keys but no locks. Space but no room. "A keyboard!" Ellie exclaimed, unable to hold back the answer. She giggled and leaned against Alma's shoulder, her eyes growing heavy. Maya watched as Alma naturally wrapped an arm around Ellie, continuing their riddle game even as Ellie's responses grew sleepier. There was something so familiar about the scene. It reminded her of evenings with her own grandmother, the way wisdom and warmth could flow so naturally between generations. "You know," Alma said softly, stroking Ellie's hair as the girl drifted off. "Daniel told me about finding you at that funeral years ago. How your voice carried all that grief and hope at once." Maya blinked in surprise. "I didn't know he remembered that. There were so many people there that day." "A mother knows," Alma said simply. "I saw him heal a little that day, listening to you sing. That's what I mean about using your voice for good. Sometimes it's in the big moments, like what happened at the diner. But sometimes it's in the quiet ones, when you think nobody's really listening." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the restaurant having emptied around them. Ellie's steady breathing mixed with the soft clink of dishes from the kitchen and the distant hum of the city beyond the hotel windows. "Mrs. Hart, Alma," Maya corrected herself. "Thank you. Not just for dinner, but for showing me what's possible." Alma smiled, still cradling the sleeping Ellie. "Oh, honey, you already knew what was possible. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us of what we're carrying inside." The evening had grown late, and Maya could see the city lights twinkling through the restaurant's windows. Ellie muttered something about keyboards in her sleep, making them both chuckle quietly. Maya stared at her phone screen, her stomach churning as she read the email from Daniel's legal team. The morning sunlight streamed through the hotel room's window, but it felt cold and harsh now. Trevor's lawyers had filed an emergency injunction to stop all production on her record. "Mama?" Ellie called from the bathroom where she was brushing her teeth. "Can we get pancakes again?" "In a minute, baby," Maya answered, her voice tight as she scrolled through the lengthy legal document. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Don't worry, our lawyers are handling it. Keep focusing on the music." But another notification popped up, this time from a gossip blog. Maya's fingers trembled as she tapped the link. The headline made her blood run cold. "Viral diner singer's success story. Too good to be true?" The article was filled with anonymous sources, claiming the whole scene at Sunrise Diner had been staged. They questioned everything, from Mr. Holloway's presence that day to Daniel's convenient appearance. Someone had even dug up old photos of Trevor and Maya from her brief stint in local theater, using them to spin wild theories. Maya's phone kept buzzing with notifications. Social media was exploding with opinions from people who'd never met her. Some defended her, but others were cruel, picking apart every detail of the video. "It was obviously staged," one comment read. "Nobody just happens to have their phone ready to record at the perfect moment." "Bet that old veteran was an actor too," another speculated. "Too perfect with all the racial tension these days." Maya's eyes burned with unshed tears. She remembered that morning so clearly, the genuine surprise on Mr. Holloway's face, the way Ruth had practically pushed her to sing, the pure joy in the diner. Now, strangers were turning it into something ugly. A knock at the door made her jump. It was James Carter, their producer, early for their scheduled session. "Morning, songbird," he said, his deep voice carrying its usual calm. Then he noticed her expression. "You've seen the news?" Maya nodded, clutching her phone like it might bite her. "They're saying it was all fake, that we planned it." James stepped inside, shaking his head. "Let me tell you something about this industry, Maya. Success brings out the vultures. Always has, always will." He settled into the room's armchair. "When I produced my first gospel hit back in '82, people said we used studio tricks. Said the choir wasn't really praising, just performing." "How did you handle it?" Maya asked. "Same way we're gonna handle this, with truth and music." James pulled out his tablet. "I've got the arrangements for Rivertown Hallelujah ready." That's our answer to all this noise. Ellie emerged from the bathroom, face freshly washed. "Mr. James, are we recording today?" "Sure are, little lady." James winked at her. "Your mama's gonna make some real magic today." Maya's phone buzzed again. This time it was Ruth. Don't let them steal your joy, honey. We all know the truth. But as Maya gathered her things for the studio, another notification caught her eye. Someone had created a side-by-side video comparing her diner performance with old footage from her community theater days, trying to prove she was just an actress. The comments were getting nastier by the minute. "Remember when music was about talent, not viral marketing?" one person wrote. "Another fake social media star," said another. "Bet that kid isn't even really hers." That last comment hit Maya like a physical blow. She glanced at Ellie, who was happily packing her backpack with books and colored pencils for their studio day. Her daughter's innocent excitement was the only real thing in this storm of accusations. James noticed Maya's hand shaking as she tried to zip up her bag. "Give me that phone," he said gently. "I need to stay informed," Maya protested weakly. "What you need is to protect your spirit." James held out his hand. "We've got music to make. Real music. The kind that answers all questions." Maya looked at her phone one last time. The notifications were still pouring in, each one a little paper cut to her confidence. With a deep breath, she dropped the phone into her bag and zipped it shut. "Come on, Ellie," she said, squaring her shoulders. "Let's go make some music." "Can I do my homework in the control room again?" Ellie asked, bouncing on her toes. "As long as you promise not to press any buttons this time," James chuckled. Maya grabbed her bag, leaving the phone buried at the bottom. The world could speculate all it wanted. She had a song in her heart and a truth to tell, and no amount of online chatter could change that. The late afternoon sun painted golden streaks through the stained glass windows of First Baptist Church, casting rainbow patterns across the worn wooden pews. Maya stood in the center aisle, taking in the familiar scent of old hymnals and lemon polish. This was where she'd first learned to sing, standing beside her grandmother in the choir loft every Sunday morning. "The acoustics in here are incredible," Daniel said, his voice echoing slightly in the empty sanctuary. He walked the perimeter, nodding appreciatively. "Natural reverb, high ceilings, wood everywhere. It's perfect." James Carter, the producer, was already setting up microphones with his team. His experienced hands worked quickly, positioning equipment around the altar area where the choir would stand. "This is what I've been talking about, Maya. Authentic, real, no fancy studio tricks needed here." Maya ran her fingers along the smooth back of a pew. "It feels right, being here, like coming full circle." The heavy wooden doors creaked open, and Ruth poked her head in. "Your choir's here, honey. All 25 of them." She grinned. "And about 50 other folks who just want to watch." Maya's heart swelled as familiar faces filed in. Mrs. Washington, who'd taught her piano. Deacon Jones, who always requested Amazing Grace at least 3 times every service. Young Marcus with his mother. Both of them faithful choir members since Maya could remember. Ellie darted between the arriving people, helping to hand out sheet music. Her pink sneakers squeaked against the floor as she moved, her enthusiasm infectious. "Mama, Mrs. Washington says she remembers when you couldn't reach the high notes." "Still can't sometimes," Maya laughed, watching as the choir members took their places. Some wore their Sunday best. Others had come straight from work in uniforms or casual clothes. It didn't matter. They were family. Daniel stood near the sound equipment, checking levels with James. "Remember, we're going for one complete take if we can. Raw, real, no breaks. Just like you'd do it on a Sunday morning." The buzz of conversation died down as James raised his hands. "All right, folks. We're recording Rivertown Hallelujah, Maya's new song about faith, community, and finding your way home. Maya will lead. Choir comes in on the chorus. Everyone ready?" Maya closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the smooth wood of the microphone in her hands. The lyrics she'd written with James over the past week felt like prayers, like pieces of her heart set to music. She opened her eyes to find Ellie watching her from the front pew, beaming with pride. "Rolling in 3, 2. James counted down silently with his fingers. The piano introduction began softly, Mrs. Washington's fingers dancing across the keys she'd played for 40 years. Maya took a deep breath and began to sing, her voice clear and strong in the sacred space. The first verse spoke of struggle and doubt, of late nights and early mornings. of a mother's prayers and a child's unwavering faith. Maya felt every word deep in her bones as she sang, remembering all the time she'd stood in this very spot, asking for guidance. When the chorus came, the choir's voices rose behind her like a wave of support, their harmonies wrapping around her melody like a warm embrace. Black and white, young and old, their voices blended perfectly, just as they had every Sunday for generations. Mrs. Washington added gospel flourishes to the piano part, and someone started clapping, a steady, rhythmic beat that soon spread through the whole church. Even Daniel was swaying slightly, his eyes closed as he listened. The second verse spoke of community, of hands reaching out to help, of strength found in unity. Maya could see Ruth wiping tears from her eyes, could feel the energy building as the song progressed. This wasn't just a recording session anymore. It was worship, it was testimony, it was home. The bridge section swelled, the choir's voices rising in powerful crescendo. Maya felt lifted by their support, her own voice soaring to notes she hadn't known she could reach. This was what James had meant by authentic. No studio could manufacture this kind of spirit. As they moved into the final chorus, Maya noticed something remarkable. The watching crowd had joined in, singing along though they'd never heard the song before. The harmony was imperfect but beautiful, every voice adding its own color to the tapestry of sound. Ellie stood up, singing with all her heart, her small voice clear and pure. Maya felt tears in her eyes but kept singing, carried forward by the music and the moment. This was why she sang not for record deals or fame, but for this feeling of connection, of shared joy and faith. The final note hung in the air, sustained by the choir until it seemed to fill every corner of the sanctuary. When it finally faded, there was a moment of perfect silence, the kind that follows only the most sacred moments. Then the choir burst into applause, their faces glowing with joy and accomplishment. The sound echoed off the walls, mingling with cheers and a few heartfelt amens from the congregation. The recording session had wrapped up as darkness fell over Rivertown. The choir members hugged Maya goodbye, their voices still humming with excitement from the evening's performance. Now, with Ellie staying at Ruth's for a sleepover, Maya walked alongside Daniel through the quiet streets lined with maple trees. The spring air carried the sweet scent of blooming dogwoods. Streetlights cast warm circles on the sidewalk, and somewhere in the distance, a train whistle echoed through the valley. Maya pulled her light jacket closer, comfortable in the peaceful silence between them. "You know," Daniel said, finally, his pace slowing, "I didn't just happen to be in that diner by chance." Maya glanced at him, noticing how he kept his eyes fixed ahead. "What do you mean?" "I knew about you already." He stopped walking altogether, turning to face her under the glow of a streetlight. "I heard you sing once before, about 5 years ago." Maya searched her memory, trying to place him in her past performances at church or local events, but came up blank. "I don't remember." "You wouldn't," Daniel said softly. "It was at Mountain View Cemetery. You sang at my daughter Sarah's funeral." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She remembered that day, a rainy Tuesday when the church's regular soloist had called in sick. The grieving family had requested Amazing Grace, and Pastor Mills had asked if anyone could step in. The scheduled singer couldn't make it. Daniel continued, his voice thick with emotion. "And then this young woman, you, just stood up from the back pew. No rehearsal, no accompaniment, just pure raw faith in every note." Maya's eyes welled with tears as the memory became clearer. She'd been there dropping off donation boxes for the church's food pantry when she'd overheard the pastor's dilemma. "I remember now. It was raining." "Pouring," Daniel corrected gently. "But you sang like the sun was shining, like you were holding all our grief in your voice without letting it break you." They started walking again, slower now. The clicking of Maya's worn shoes against the sidewalk kept time with their shared memories. "Sarah was 12, Daniel said. "Leukemia. We tried everything, every treatment, every specialist. When nothing else worked, all we had left was faith." "And then at the funeral, when you sang about Amazing Grace," he paused, collecting himself. "It was like you were telling my family's whole story in those few minutes. The pain, the hope, the surrender, the peace, all of it." Maya wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. I didn't know who you were then. I just wanted to help." That's exactly why it meant so much. Daniel stopped at the corner where Cherry Street met River Road. You weren't singing for money or fame or anything else. You were singing because someone needed comfort, and you could give it. The weight of this revelation settled over Maya. All these years, her voice had touched someone's life in their darkest moment, someone who would later appear in that diner and change her entire future. "When I heard you sing, 'His Eye is on the Sparrow' at Sunrise Diner," Daniel said, "I recognized that same spirit instantly. It wasn't just your talent, though God knows you have plenty of that. It was your heart, the way you gave that veteran exactly what he needed in that moment, just like you did for my family years ago." Maya couldn't hold back her tears now. They rolled freely down her cheeks as she understood the full circle of this moment. Her simple act of kindness at a funeral had planted a seed that would bloom years later into this incredible opportunity. "I've been in the music business for 20 years, Daniel continued, his own eyes glistening. "I've heard countless amazing voices. But what you have, it's different. It's a gift that's meant to be shared. When I saw you in that diner, I knew it was time to help that gift reach more people who need it." They had reached Maya's small house, its porch light casting a warm welcome. The old swing creaked gently in the evening breeze, and through the window, she could see the stack of sheet music on her piano, waiting for tomorrow's practice. Maya turned to Daniel, finally understanding that this wasn't just about record deals and contracts. It was about something much deeper, the way music could heal, could connect, could carry both sorrow and hope in the same breath. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for the opportunity, but for telling me this. For letting me know that my voice mattered even before all of this." Daniel nodded, his usual businesslike demeanor softened by the weight of shared memories. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness come back to us in ways we never could have imagined. Maya stood on her porch steps, watching as Daniel walked back toward downtown where his hotel waited. The night air seemed to hold all the reverence of a prayer, all the mystery of how life's hardest moments could weave themselves into something beautiful years later. She touched her throat gently, thinking of all the songs still waiting to be sung, all the hearts still waiting to be touched. Her voice had been a comfort in the valley of grief before she even knew whose lives she was touching. Now, with this chance to reach more people, she felt the responsibility and blessing of it all settling deep in her soul. The old majestic theater stood like a sleeping giant on Rivertown's main square, its faded red brick facade yearning for new life. Early Monday morning, Maya pulled up in her rusty Corolla to find Ruth already there, armed with cleaning supplies and a determined smile. "Honey, you're right on time," Ruth called out, waving a paint roller like a conductor's baton. "We've got ourselves an army of volunteers coming." True to Ruth's word, cars began filling the square. Mrs. Hart arrived with boxes of fresh donuts, followed by choir members carrying ladders and drop cloths. Even Mr. Holloway showed up, insisting he could still wield a paintbrush despite his 90 years. "Now don't you worry about me," he said, settling into a folding chair with a small brush and a can of gold paint for the lobby trim. "I may be slow, but I'm steady." Maya's heart swelled as she watched her community come together. Someone had brought an old boombox, and gospel music floated through the dusty air. The theater's high ceilings, though water-stained, still held their original ornate moldings. Sunshine streamed through newly cleaned windows, catching dust motes that danced like tiny stars. "Look at this, Mama," Ellie called from the balcony, where she and her friends were carefully wiping down the brass railings. "I found an old program from 1962. Ruth organized everyone into teams. The choir took charge of the stage area, their voices rising in impromptu harmony as they worked. Mrs. Hart supervised the lobby restoration, sharing stories about performances she'd seen there in her youth. "This place used to be the heart of Rivertown," she told Maya as they painted the walls a warm cream color. "Every Friday night there'd be music or plays or both. Black, white, young, old, everyone came together here." Maya stepped back to admire their progress, accidentally bumping into Daniel, who'd arrived with lunch for everyone. He steadied her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Sorry about that," she laughed, wiping paint from her hands. I'm getting carried away with all this." "Don't apologize," Daniel said, looking around appreciatively. "This is exactly what music should do. Bring people together, build something beautiful." As the afternoon wore on, the transformation became more evident. Fresh paint brightened the walls, and the wooden floors gleamed from careful polishing. The stage curtains, though still showing their age, hung straighter after careful steaming. Maya found herself drawn to the stage repeatedly. She walked its worn boards, feeling the history beneath her feet. How many other singers had stood here, sharing their dreams with Rivertown? "Try it out," Ruth encouraged, noting Maya's wistful expression. "Give these old walls a preview." The workers paused as Maya cleared her throat. Without accompaniment, she began "Rivertown Hallelujah," her voice filling every corner of the space. The acoustics were perfect, wrapping her notes in warmth and carrying them to the highest balcony. When she finished, the silence held for a moment before erupting into applause and cheers. Even the teenagers stopped their work to whistle and stamp their feet. "That's what I'm talking about," Ruth exclaimed, wiping happy tears from her eyes. "This place was made for voices like yours, baby girl." The work continued through the afternoon. Someone ordered pizza, and they all sat in circles on the floor, sharing stories and dreams for the theater's future. Maya noticed how Ellie had become everyone's honorary granddaughter, fetching water bottles and offering encouragement to tired workers. "Your girl's got a servant's heart," Mrs. Hart observed, watching Ellie help Mr. Holloway clean his paintbrush. "Just like her mama." As the sun began to set, the volunteers gradually departed, leaving behind a theater that looked more alive than it had in decades. The lobby sparkled, the auditorium glowed, and the stage stood ready for its upcoming performance. Maya and Ruth stood in the center aisle, arms around each other's shoulders, admiring their community's handiwork. "I never thought I'd see this place shine again," Ruth said softly. "But here we are, thanks to your voice and these good people." "Thanks to love and faith," Maya corrected her, squeezing Ruth's shoulder. "And a whole lot of elbow grease." They gathered their supplies and headed for the exit. Through the newly cleaned front windows, the setting sun painted the square in shades of gold and pink. As they locked up, Maya noticed a familiar figure standing in the shadows across the square. Trevor's form was unmistakable, his stance rigid as he watched them with narrowed eyes. The restored majestic theater glowed with fresh paint and polished brass fixtures in the late afternoon sun. Inside, the velvet curtains hung rich and heavy, their deep crimson folds catching the stage lights. Maya stood center stage, adjusting the microphone stand one last time after the final rehearsal. "That's perfect, Maya," Daniel called from the third row. "Tomorrow night's going to be magical." Ellie sat cross-legged in the front row, homework spread across her lap. She'd been splitting her time between schoolwork and helping arrange programs for tomorrow's grand reopening. "Can we run through Rivertown Hallelujah one more time, Mama, please?" Maya smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. "Baby, we've done it 3 times already. Let's save something for tomorrow." Ruth emerged from the wings, carrying a clipboard and checking off items. "The catering's confirmed, the programs are printed, and—" She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes fixed on something at the back of the theater. Maya followed Ruth's gaze. 2 women in business attire were walking down the center aisle, their heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Behind them, a police officer lingered near the entrance. "Miss Brooks?" the taller woman called out. "I'm Sandra Wheeler from Child Protective Services. This is my colleague, Patricia Martinez. We need to speak with you." The air seemed to vanish from the room. Maya's hands grew cold around the microphone stand. "What's this about?" Mrs. Wheeler reached the edge of the stage, her expression professionally neutral. "We've received a formal complaint regarding Ellie's welfare. The allegations include concerns about stability, possible exploitation, and inappropriate exposure to the entertainment industry." "That's ridiculous," Daniel stood up. "I can personally vouch for—" "I'm sorry, sir," Mrs. Martinez interrupted, "but this is a confidential matter between CPS and Ms. Brooks." Ellie had gone very still in her seat, her math homework forgotten. Ruth moved closer to her, placing a protective hand on the girl's shoulder. "The complaint was quite detailed," Mrs. Wheeler continued. "Given the nature of the allegations and your current career transition, We're required to conduct a thorough investigation. In the meantime, we have an emergency placement order." Maya's legs nearly gave out. "Emergency? What are you saying?" "Ellie will need to stay with a temporary guardian while we assess the situation. We understand Mrs. Delgado is already listed as an emergency contact for school?" Ruth's voice came sharp and clear. "Yes, I am. And I'm right here." "Mama?" Ellie's voice trembled as she looked up at Maya. The sound pierced Maya's heart like a physical pain. Mrs. Wheeler nodded. "That simplifies things. Mrs. Delgado, are you willing to serve as temporary guardian until our investigation is complete?" "Of course I am," Ruth said firmly, her arm tightening around Ellie. "But this isn't right. Maya is an excellent mother." Maya finally found her voice again. How long will this investigation take?" "We'll schedule a hearing as soon as possible," Mrs. Martinez said. "Usually within 72 hours. You'll be notified of the exact time and location." Daniel had pulled out his phone. "I'm calling our legal team right now. Maya, don't say anything else until—" "Please," Maya interrupted, her voice breaking. "Can I just have a moment with my daughter?" The CPS workers exchanged glances, then nodded. Maya climbed down from the stage, her legs feeling like lead. Ellie ran to her, throwing her arms around Maya's waist. "I don't want to go," Ellie whispered against Maya's shirt. "Please, don't let them take me." Maya knelt down, cupping her daughter's face in her hands. "Listen to me, baby. This is just temporary, okay? Miss Ruth is going to take good care of you, and I'm going to fix this. I promise you." Ellie's lower lip trembled. "But the show tomorrow." "Don't you worry about that," Maya said, forcing strength into her voice. "You just be good for Miss Ruth. Do your homework. Say your prayers. I'll see you so soon." Mrs. Wheeler stepped forward. "We need to process the paperwork now. Mrs. Delgado, if you and Ellie could come with us." Ruth gathered Ellie's school books, her movements deliberately slow. "I'll take her straight home with me. She has clothes at my house from her sleepovers." Maya hugged Ellie one more time, breathing in the familiar scent of her daughter's butterfly-shaped hair clips and grape bubble gum. "I love you so much, baby girl. So much." "Love you too, Mama," Ellie whispered back. Ruth took Ellie's hand, shooting Maya a look full of determination. "We'll get through this. You hear me, Maya? We'll get through this together." Maya could only nod, her throat too tight for words. She watched as Ruth led Ellie up the aisle, followed by the CPS workers. The police officer held the door open, and then they were gone. The theater felt cavernous now, every shadow deeper, every echo haunting. Maya stood frozen in place, tears streaming down her face. They fell silently, dropping onto the newly refinished floor like rain. The empty theater felt different at night. Moonlight filtered through the high windows, casting long shadows across the worn seats. Maya's footsteps echoed in the darkness as she made her way down the center aisle, her phone's flashlight beam bouncing off the gilded wall decorations they'd lovingly restored. Sleep had been impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ellie's face as the CPS workers led her away. The sound of her daughter's quiet sobs haunted her, even now. Maya reached the sound booth at the back of the theater. The space was still under construction, with cables snaking across the floor and half-installed equipment covered in plastic sheets. But the basic recording setup was functional. She'd helped test it herself just yesterday, before everything fell apart. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the door. The small room smelled of fresh paint and new carpet. She found the main power switch and flipped it on, watching as the recording equipment hummed to life. The familiar sight of faders and LED displays brought a small measure of comfort. "Lord, give me strength," she whispered, settling into the operator's chair. She'd learned the basics of the equipment during sound checks, and now those lessons felt like a blessing. Her fingers moved across the controls, setting levels and checking connections. Maya pulled the worn headphones over her ears and adjusted the microphone stand. The booth wasn't soundproofed yet, but at this hour, the theater's thick walls would keep her voice from carrying to the street. She closed her eyes and remembered all the nights she'd sung Ellie to sleep. The lullaby came naturally, as if her heart had been waiting to share it. "Sleep, my child, beneath God's light. Angels watch you through the night." Her voice was raw with emotion, but she didn't try to hide it. This wasn't about perfection. It was about love, pure and simple. The melody flowed like a gentle stream, carrying all the words she couldn't say face to face right now. As she sang, Maya thought about Ellie in Ruth's spare bedroom, probably curled up with the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3. Would she be able to sleep? Would she understand why this was happening? The lullaby's second verse brought tears to her eyes. Though we're apart, my love stays near. Chase your dreams without any fear. Maya had written these words years ago, during a late-night feeding when Ellie was just a baby. Back then, she'd been terrified of failing as a single mother. Now, those same fears were back, twisted into something darker by Trevor's schemes. The recording equipment captured every nuance, every tender note. Maya kept the arrangement simple. Just her voice, pure and unadorned. No fancy effects, no backing track. Just a mother's heart reaching out to her child. When the last note faded, Maya sat in silence for a moment, letting the tears fall freely. Then she played back the recording, making sure the levels were right. Her voice filled the small booth, and for a moment she could almost imagine Ellie was there, listening with that bright smile of hers. The export process was simple enough. Maya saved the file and attached it to a message for Ruth's tablet, the one she knew Ellie would be using for her homework. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she typed the message. My precious girl, I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Listen to this before bed. Remember, nothing can ever separate us, not really. She hit send and watched the progress bar inch across the screen. When it completed, Maya powered down the equipment with careful precision. Everything had to be perfect for tomorrow's show, even if her world was falling apart. Standing in the sound booth doorway, Maya took one last look at the theater. Tomorrow, these seats would be filled with townspeople, some supporting her, others probably whispering about the CPS investigation. But none of that mattered as much as the empty front row seat where Ellie should have been. Hold on, baby, Maya whispered into the darkness. Mama's going to make this right. She locked the sound booth and made her way back down the aisle, her footsteps no longer echoing but falling softly, like prayers in an empty church. The county courthouse loomed over Maya, like a stone giant. Its marble columns stretched toward the morning sky as she climbed the wide steps, her Sunday best dress feeling too tight around her neck. Ruth walked beside her, one hand firmly gripping Maya's elbow for support, both physical and emotional. Deep breaths, child, Ruth whispered. The truth has a way of coming to light. Inside the courtroom, Maya's heart skipped when she saw Ellie sitting with the court-appointed guardian, her daughter's face lighting up before remembering she had to stay put. Maya forced herself to look away, focusing instead on Judge Margaret Jennings as she entered. The judge was a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses that hung from a beaded chain. All rise, the bailiff called out. The proceedings began with Trevor's lawyer presenting their case. Maya's stomach churned as he painted her as an opportunist, someone using her child for publicity. He showed social media posts, carefully selected comments, and tried to frame the viral video as a calculated scheme. And furthermore, Your Honor, Trevor's lawyer continued, the sudden pursuit of a music career demonstrates a concerning shift in priorities that could destabilize the child's home environment. Judge Jennings peered over her glasses. I'd like to hear from character witnesses before making any determinations. Who speaks for Ms. Brooks? Ruth was the first to take the stand. She smoothed her floral dress and placed her hand on the Bible, swearing to tell the truth with the same conviction she brought to her Sunday prayers. I've known Maya Brooks for 8 years, Ruth began, her voice steady and clear. She started working at my diner when Ellie was just a tiny thing, barely walking. Every single day, that girl has put her daughter first. She works extra shifts to afford dance lessons, stays up late sewing costumes for school plays, and never, not once, has she missed a parent-teacher conference. Ruth's eyes grew fierce as she continued. When Ellie had pneumonia last winter, Maya slept in a chair by her hospital bed for 5 straight nights, still coming to work for the morning rush. She's not chasing fame, Your Honor. She's using a God-given gift to make a better life for her child. Mrs. Alma Hart testified next, her elegant presence commanding attention. "I've only known Maya Brooks for a short time," she admitted, "but I recognize a mother's heart when I see one." During studio sessions, she insisted on scheduling around Ellie's school hours. She rejected song lyrics that weren't appropriate for young ears. Every decision she's made has considered her daughter's welfare first. The most powerful testimony came from Mr. Holloway. The 90-year-old veteran made his way to the stand slowly, refusing help, his military bearings still evident despite his age. "Your Honor," he began, his voice weathered but strong, "I fought for this country so people could have a fair chance at their dreams. Maya Brooks isn't just a talented singer. She's the kind of mother who teaches her daughter to respect everyone, regardless of their age or color. On my birthday, I watched that little girl beam with pride as her mama sang. That wasn't staged. That was pure love." Trevor shifted uncomfortably in his seat as witness after witness spoke about Maya's character. The diner's regular customers, Ellie's teachers, even the church choir director, they all painted a picture of a devoted mother who happened to have an extraordinary voice. The turning point came when Daniel's legal team called their technical expert, Dr. Sarah Chen. She loaded several files onto the courtroom's display screen. "I've analyzed the video Mr. Kincaid claims proves the diner performance was staged," Dr. Chen explained, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Using audio forensic software, I can demonstrate that the clip circulating on certain websites was deliberately altered." The screen split to show two waveform patterns. The original video, taken on Ms. Brooks's daughter's phone, shows consistent ambient noise patterns typical of a busy diner. The doctored version shows clear signs of splicing and audio manipulation. Dr. Chen highlighted specific sections. "Here you can see where words were rearranged to make it appear Ms. Brooks and Mr. Hart had pre-planned the encounter. The metadata proves these changes were made after the fact." Judge Jennings leaned forward, studying the evidence carefully. "And you can verify the origin of these alterations?" "Yes, Your Honor." Dr. Chen pulled up an email chain. The altered video was first uploaded from an account registered to Trevor Kincaid's media company. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Trevor's face had gone pale, and his lawyer was frantically whispering in his ear. Judge Jennings raised her hand for silence. She removed her glasses and looked directly at Maya. "Miss Brooks, would you please stand?" Maya rose on shaky legs, feeling the weight of every eye in the courtroom. "I've heard a great deal about your character today," the judge began. "But what strikes me most is not the testimony of your supporters, though they are impressive. What strikes me is the transparent attempt to manipulate this court through doctored evidence and false narratives." She turned a stern gaze toward Trevor. "This court takes a very dim view of such tactics. Furthermore, the suggestion that pursuing a legitimate career opportunity constitutes parental neglect is both legally and logically unsound." Maya held her breath as Judge Jennings continued. "Based on the evidence presented, I am restoring full custody of Ellie Brooks to her mother, effective immediately. Additionally, I am issuing a restraining order preventing Mr. Kincaid from approaching either Ms. Brooks or her daughter." The judge's gavel cracked against the sound block, and Maya's knees nearly buckled with relief. Ellie was already running toward her, the court guardian making no move to stop her. Mother and daughter collided in a tearful embrace as the courtroom erupted in quiet congratulations. "I love you, baby," Maya whispered into Ellie's hair, holding her daughter close. "I love you so much." "I knew you'd fix it, Mama," Ellie whispered back, her arms tight around Maya's waist. "I just knew it." The afternoon sun filtered through the courthouse's tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Maya sat at the defendant's table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as Daniel's legal team prepared their documents. The tension in the room felt thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus Chen, Daniel's lead attorney, stood with practiced confidence. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that will conclusively settle the matter of Mr. Kincaid's alleged management contract." He approached the bench with a folder, his shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. Trevor shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his smug expression faltering for the first time since the proceedings began. His attorney leaned forward, suddenly alert. Judge Jennings adjusted her reading glasses. "Proceed, Mr. Chen." "What we have here is an email dated October 15th, 2019. Sent from Mr. Kincaid's personal account to his then accountant. Marcus projected the email onto the courtroom screen. In it, Mr. Kincaid explicitly rescinds his management contract with Ms. Brooks to avoid tax liability on potential future earnings. Trevor's face turned an alarming shade of red. His attorney whispered urgently in his ear, but Trevor shoved him away. "That was private correspondence," Trevor burst out, standing up. "Mr. Kincaid, control yourself," Judge Jennings warned, her gavel striking once. "Sit down," Marcus continued, his voice steady. "The email clearly states, and I quote, 'I hereby rescind all contractual obligations with Maya Brooks. Remove her from the books. I want nothing to do with her or any future earnings that might complicate my tax situation.'" Maya remembered that period. Trevor had been furious when she'd refused to perform at a string of questionable venues. He'd told her she'd never work in music again. Now his own words were coming back to haunt him. "Furthermore," Marcus added, Mr. Kincaid's accountant responded confirming the rescission and filed the appropriate paperwork. "We have those documents as well." He handed another set of papers to the judge. Trevor's attorney stood, looking defeated. "Your Honor, we'd like to request a brief recess to review these documents." "Denied," Judge Jennings said firmly. "These should have been disclosed during discovery. Mr. Kincaid, approach the bench." Trevor dragged himself forward, his earlier confidence completely deflated. "Mr. Kincaid," Judge Jennings began, her voice sharp with disapproval, "not only did you attempt to extort Brooks with a contract you knew was void, but you also participated in a malicious campaign to separate a mother from her child. This court takes a very dim view of such actions." She turned to Maya, her expression softening slightly. "Ms. Brooks, you are free to pursue your musical career without any obligation to Mr. Kincaid. And given the evidence presented earlier about the custody matter, I'm preparing a restraining order to prevent Mr. Kincaid from approaching you or your daughter." Relief flooded through Maya's body. She felt Ruth's hand squeeze her shoulder, and across the room, she saw Daniel nodding with satisfaction. After the judge dismissed the court, Daniel approached Maya in the hallway. The marble walls echoed with the sound of departing footsteps and murmured conversations. "Maya," Daniel said, his voice warm with pride, "I'd like to talk to you about something important." He gestured toward an empty conference room. Inside, Daniel pulled out a chair for Maya, while Ruth settled into another seat nearby. He placed a leather portfolio on the table and opened it. "What we've been through these past weeks, it's shown me something important," Daniel began. "There's a hunger out there for authentic, community-based music. Music that comes from real places and real stories." Maya nodded, thinking of the comments and letters she'd received about her diner performance. "I want to create something new at Heartline," Daniel continued. "An imprint called Front Porch, focusing on faith-rooted music that brings communities together. And I want you to be more than just our first artist." He slid a document across the table. "I want you to be a partner." Maya's eyes widened as she scanned the paper. "A partner? You'll have creative input on signing new artists, developing community programs, everything," Daniel explained. "Your experience, your heart for people, that's exactly what this imprint needs." Ruth leaned forward to read over Maya's shoulder. "Child, this is the Lord opening doors." Maya ran her fingers over the Heartline Records letterhead. "This means I can keep performing but also help other artists stay true to their roots?" "Exactly," Daniel smiled. "No more pressure to change who you are or hide your faith. We'll record in churches, community centers, even diners if that's where the Spirit leads." Maya picked up the pen Daniel offered, its weight feeling significant in her hand. She thought about all the moments that had led here. Singing in church as a girl, performing at funerals and celebrations, that morning in the diner with Mr. Holloway. Each note had been a step on this path. "Where do I sign?" she asked, her voice steady with conviction. Daniel pointed to the marked line, and Maya's signature flowed onto the page, each letter representing a new chapter in her story. As she dotted the final E, she felt something settle in her spirit, a sense of rightness, of coming home while moving forward. "Welcome to Heartline's Front Porch," Daniel said, extending his hand. "Let's make some music that matters." The late summer evening painted the riverside in warm amber hues as hundreds of folding chairs filled the grassy slope leading down to the bandstand. String lights twinkled overhead, crisscrossing between tall oak trees like stars brought down to earth. The old wooden stage had been transformed with fresh paint and flowers, looking as hopeful as Maya felt standing behind its curtain. Maya smoothed Ellie's sundress, her hands trembling slightly. "Ready, baby girl?" "Ready, Mama." Ellie beamed up at her, clutching her own small microphone. "I'm not even scared." The choir members gathered around them in their royal blue robes, their familiar faces glowing with pride. Mrs. Hart adjusted Maya's simple white dress, then squeezed her shoulders. "You look beautiful, dear. Both of you do." Ruth peeked through the curtain and turned back with misty eyes. "The whole town's here, Maya, even folks from 3 counties over." Maya took a deep breath, remembering that morning in the diner that felt like a lifetime ago. The smell of coffee, the nervous flutter in her stomach before singing for Mr. Holloway, the way Daniel had looked at her with tears in his eyes. Now here she was, about to perform her first official concert as a Heartline artist. The stage lights warmed as Daniel stepped out to welcome the crowd. His voice carried across the gentle sound of the river. "Good evening, Rivertown. Tonight is special for many reasons. It's about music, yes, but more than that. It's about community, faith, and the power of a mother's love." Maya squeezed Ellie's hand as Daniel continued. "When I first heard Maya Brooks sing in that diner, I knew her voice was extraordinary. What I didn't know then was how extraordinary her heart would prove to be." The curtains parted slowly, revealing the packed audience. Faces Maya had known all her life mixed with strangers who'd traveled to hear her sing. Mr. Holloway sat in the front row, his veteran's cap held proudly over his heart. Maya stepped forward with Ellie, and the choir arranged themselves behind them. The evening air was perfect, still and clear, carrying sound like a blessing. She nodded to the pianist, and the first notes of "His Eye is on the Sparrow" floated across the crowd. This time, when Maya sang, she wasn't just performing, she was telling her story, their story. Her voice rose pure and strong, just as it had that morning in the diner, but now enriched by everything they'd been through. Ellie's sweet soprano joined in on the chorus, their voices twining together like a mother's arms around her child. The crowd sat transfixed as they transitioned into "Rivertown Hallelujah." The choir's harmonies swelled behind them, and soon the audience was swaying, some wiping tears, others raising their hands in praise. Even the teenagers who usually hung back by the refreshment table were moving to the music, their phones forgotten in their pockets. Mrs. Hart conducted the choir with elegant gestures, while Ruth beamed from the side of the stage. Maya caught glimpses of Daniel standing near the sound booth, his expression peaceful as he watched the community come together through music. For the finale, Ellie stepped forward to announce their new song. "This one's called 'Hold Fast,'" she said clearly into her microphone. "Mama and I wrote it together during the hard times, but it's not about being sad. It's about knowing God's got you, even when things get scary." Maya's heart swelled with pride as Ellie started the first verse, her young voice carrying the words they'd crafted during those nights apart. The choir joined softly, building like a wave of support, and when Maya's voice rose to meet her daughters on the chorus, the harmony felt like a testimony to everything they'd overcome. People were standing now, joining in as they picked up the simple, hopeful chorus. "Hold fast to love, hold fast to faith, hold fast to the light that leads you home." The words echoed off the water, carried by hundreds of voices united in song. As the final notes faded into the twilight, the applause was immediate and thunderous. Maya pulled Ellie close, both of them laughing and crying at once. The choir surrounded them in a group hug, and for a moment, it felt like the whole world was wrapped in joy. Daniel waited for the applause to quiet before stepping back to the microphone. His voice was thick with emotion as he spoke. "Music has the power to heal, to unite, to remind us of what matters most. Tonight, we've all been witness to that power." He paused, smiling at Maya and Ellie. "Which is why I'm honored to announce that Heartline Records is establishing the Rivertown Future Fund, a scholarship program for single parents pursuing their dreams in music and the arts. Every dollar of producer royalties from Maya's recordings will go directly to this fund." Fresh applause erupted as Maya covered her mouth in surprise. Ellie jumped up and down, tugging at her mother's dress. "Mama, you're going to help other mamas like you!" The evening air filled with music once more as the choir led everyone in one last song. The string lights twinkled overhead, the river flowed steadily past, and Maya Brooks stood on stage with her daughter, her voice rising clear and true into the gathering night. The morning sun streamed through the freshly cleaned windows of Sunrise Diner's back room, catching dust motes that danced in the air like tiny stars. Where stacked chairs and surplus supplies had once gathered cobwebs, now stood neat rows of donated instruments, 3 keyboards on folding stands, a collection of guitars hanging on the wall, and even a small drum set tucked into the corner. Maya adjusted the height of a microphone stand, smiling as she remembered her own first time holding one. "Is this better, Mrs. Chen?" she asked the elderly woman who sat primly on a wooden stool, sheet music clutched in her hands. "Much better, dear," Mrs. Chen replied, her eyes twinkling. "Though I still don't know why you want an old woman like me in your choir." "Because everyone deserves to sing," Maya said firmly, then turned as the bell above the diner's front door chimed. A group of kids tumbled in, led by Ellie, who was practically bouncing with excitement. "Mama, Tommy brought his grandfather's harmonica," Ellie called out, pulling along a shy boy who clutched a worn leather case. The back room slowly filled with people from every corner of the community. Jason, a teenager with green hair and multiple piercings, helped 8-year-old Sarah tune her borrowed guitar. Mr. Holloway sat in his usual spot by the window, tapping his cane in rhythm as he taught 2 middle school boys the basics of reading music. Ruth moved between the tables in the main diner area, which was quieter now during the afternoon lull. She carried a tray of lemonade and her famous oatmeal cookies, pausing to watch through the doorway as Maya demonstrated proper breathing techniques to a semicircle of attentive faces. "Remember," Maya said, placing a hand on her diaphragm, "the power comes from down here, not from your throat. Mrs. Chen, why don't you show us that lovely alto line you were practicing?" Mrs. Chen cleared her throat nervously, but when she began to sing Amazing Grace, her voice carried clear and strong. One by one, other voices joined in, young and old, trained and untrained, weaving together in spontaneous harmony. Daniel Hart, who had slipped in quietly with his mother Alma, leaned against the doorframe next to Ruth. "She's a natural teacher," he observed softly. "Always has been," Ruth replied, offering him a cookie. "Even when she was just serving coffee, she was teaching everyone about grace and perseverance without saying a word." The lesson continued as Maya moved from group to group. She helped Tommy coax his first tentative notes from the harmonica, showed Jason a new chord progression on the guitar, and gently corrected Sarah's finger positioning. All the while, Ellie flitted around the room like a happy butterfly, offering encouragement and sharing her own recent learning experiences. "Now remember," Maya addressed the room, "music isn't about being perfect. It's about opening your heart and letting what's inside flow out. Whether you're singing in church, humming while you work, or just tapping your feet to the radio, it all matters." Mrs. Hart settled into a chair near the window, her dignified presence drawing several curious children. "When I was teaching during the hard times," she began, as several kids gathered around her, "we didn't have instruments or proper music rooms, but we had our voices, and we had each other. That was enough to keep hope alive." The afternoon light shifted to early evening gold, and still, the music continued. Parents arriving to pick up their children often found themselves drawn into the room, some tentatively joining in, others just listening with peaceful smiles on their faces. A small group of teens who usually hung out at the skate park had drifted in, attracted by the music. They stood awkwardly at first, trying to look unimpressed, until Maya invited them to try the drums. Soon, they were working out a rhythm section for the choir's next song. Ruth watched it all from her spot by the door, her heart full. The diner had always been more than just a restaurant. It had been a gathering place, a shelter from life's storms, a home for those who needed one. Now, with music filling its walls, it felt even more complete. "You know," she said to Maya during a brief break, "I remember when you first started working here. You were so quiet, except when you sang. Look at you now." Maya hugged her mentor tight. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Ruth. You believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. And now look. Ruth gestured to the room full of people making music together. This is better than any chart position. Maya looked around at her gathered community. Mrs. Chen teaching a young girl how to read sheet music, Mr. Holloway demonstrating proper harmonica technique to an enthusiastic audience, Ellie helping a younger child find the right keys on a keyboard. The sound might not have been professional quality, but it was real and warm and alive. The late afternoon sun painted everyone in soft gold light through the windows, and the mixed sounds of practice, laughter, and conversation filled the air with a joy that no recording studio could ever capture. This wasn't about hit singles or record deals anymore. It was about sharing the gift of music with others, just as it had been shared with her. Maya sat cross-legged on her living room floor, surrounded by stacks of envelopes in various shapes and sizes. The afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the sea of paper before her. Ellie bounced excitedly beside her, already tearing into an envelope with careful fingers. "Mama, look at this one. The stamp is from Alaska." Ellie held up a cream-colored envelope with a wildlife stamp in the corner. Maya smiled, watching her daughter's eyes light up with wonder. It had been 3 months since the Riverside concert, and letters kept arriving daily at the diner. Ruth had been collecting them in a special box behind the counter, and today was finally the day to read them all. "Should we make some hot chocolate first?" Maya asked, but Ellie was already deep into reading the first letter. "This lady says she listens to Rivertown Hallelujah every morning before work," Ellie reported, her finger trailing along the handwritten lines. "She says it reminds her of her grandmother's church." Maya picked up an envelope that had been decorated with hand-drawn musical notes. Inside, she found 3 pages of careful handwriting. As she read, her throat tightened with emotion. "Dear Maya," she read aloud, her voice soft. "I heard your version of His Eye is on the Sparrow during my last round of chemotherapy. The nurse had your video playing on her phone, and when I heard your voice, something in me just broke open, in a good way." Ellie scooted closer, leaning against her mother's arm. Maya continued reading, her voice growing thick with emotion. "The way you sang it wasn't polished or perfect, but it was real. I could hear the years of morning prayers in your voice, the kind of faith that's been tested but held strong. When you got to the part about 'I know He watches me,' I started crying right there in my treatment chair. The nurses thought something was wrong, but I told them everything was finally right." Maya paused, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Ellie wordlessly passed her a tissue from the box on the coffee table. "For the rest of my treatments, I played that song. Other patients started requesting it. Now we have a whole playlist of your songs that we share in the cancer center. Your music reminds us that we're not alone, that someone else understands what it means to keep faith when things get hard." The letter was signed, "Margaret Wilson, Survivor," with a small purple ribbon drawn beside her name. "Wow," Ellie whispered, running her fingers over the signature. "Your voice helped her get better, Mama." Maya shook her head, humble as always. "God helped her get better, baby. I was just blessed to be part of her journey." They spent the next hour opening more letters. There was one from a truck driver who played Maya's albums during long nighttime hauls, saying her songs kept him awake and hopeful. Another came from a teacher who used Rivertown Hallelujah in her music class, teaching kids about gospel traditions and community singing. A thick envelope revealed a bundle of drawings from a Sunday school class in Georgia. Each child had illustrated their favorite part of Maya's songs. One crayon masterpiece showed the Sunrise Diner with musical notes floating out the windows like butterflies. "Can we keep this one?" Ellie asked, holding up a letter written in shaky handwriting. "It's from a girl my age. Her mom's in heaven, but she says when she hears you sing, it feels like getting a hug from above." Maya squeezed Ellie's shoulder, remembering all the nights she'd sung her daughter to sleep after the divorce. "Of course we can keep it, baby! Why don't we make a special place for it?" Ellie jumped up and ran to her room, returning with a fresh corkboard she'd gotten at the back-to-school sale. "We can hang it right above my desk. Then, whenever I'm doing homework, I can look up and remember how your songs help people." Maya watched as Ellie carefully selected a bright yellow pushpin from her craft box. With deliberate care, she positioned Margaret's letter in the center of the corkboard, smoothing out the creases before securing it in place. "There," Ellie said proudly, stepping back to admire her work. "Now we'll always remember the lady who beat cancer while listening to your voice." Maya stood beside her daughter, both of them looking at the letter that represented so much more than just words on paper. It was a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of faith, like singing a hymn in a small-town diner, could ripple out and touch lives they'd never even imagined. The late afternoon sun caught the yellow pushpin, making it glow like a tiny star against the white paper, a beacon of hope pinned right there above Ellie's desk, where tomorrow would bring more homework, more songs, and more letters from hearts touched by a mother's voice raised in faith. The late summer breeze carried the scent of honeysuckle across the town square as Maya stood backstage at the newly renovated theater. Her fingers traced the worn edges of the song sheet Ellie had helped her write over the past few weeks. The paper bore their combined handwriting, Maya's neat cursive mixed with Ellie's eager scrawl, complete with doodles in the margins. "5 minutes, Miss Brooks," called the stage manager, a local high school drama teacher who'd volunteered to help with the community concert series. Maya smoothed her simple blue dress and checked her reflection in the mirror. No fancy styling team tonight, just her natural curls and the silver cross necklace her grandmother had given her. This was how her town knew her, and this was how she'd stay. Ellie peeked around the corner, practically vibrating with excitement. At 12, she'd grown taller over the summer, but her eyes still held that same spark of mischief and joy. "Mama, the place is packed. Even Mr. Peterson came, and you know how he complains about his back hurting in those theater seats." Ellie grinned, adjusting her own matching blue dress. Maya pulled her daughter into a quick hug. "You sure about doing this tonight, baby? We could save the new song for—" "No way," Ellie cut in. "We wrote it together. It's perfect for tonight. Please?" The earnestness in her daughter's voice melted any remaining hesitation. This song had been born from their late-night talks, from the struggles they'd faced, from the community that had lifted them up when times were hard. The opening notes of the introduction began to play. Maya recognized James Carter's distinctive piano style he'd driven down from the city specially for tonight's show. Mrs. Hart sat in the front row, her silver hair gleaming under the stage lights. Ruth had closed the diner early, and Maya could see her familiar red sweater in the third row. Maya walked onto the stage to warm applause, but instead of taking her usual place at the microphone, she gestured for Ellie to join her. A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience. "Good evening, everyone," Maya said, her voice carrying clearly through the renovated acoustics. "Tonight, I want to share something special with you. My daughter and I have been working on a new song. It's called Hold Fast, and it's about how this community taught us to keep faith when times get rough." James began playing a gentle melody, his fingers dancing across the keys. Maya closed her eyes, remembering the night they'd started writing this song. Ellie had been doing her homework, struggling with a poem for English class, when she'd looked up and said, "Mama, how do you hold on to hope when everything's trying to pull it away?" That question had become their chorus. Maya's voice filled the theater, starting soft and building with each verse. The song spoke of morning light through diner windows, of hands held across generations, of prayers whispered in midnight hours. When they reached the chorus, Ellie joined in, their voices weaving together in perfect harmony. Maya glanced at the audience as they sang. Mr. Holloway, the veteran whose birthday had started it all, was nodding along, his weathered hands keeping time on his knees. Next to him sat Mrs. Chen from the flower shop, who had kept fresh daisies in the diner's window all through the custody battle. The Thompson sisters, who taught Sunday school, were swaying gently in their seats. Something magical happened during the second chorus. It started with Ruth, who knew the power of joining voices from her years in the church choir. She stood up and began singing along. The simple melody was easy to catch, and the words spoke straight to the heart. Mrs. Hart joined next, then Mr. Holloway, then the Thompson sisters. Soon, the entire theater was filled with voices young and old, trained and untrained, all blending together in a tapestry of sound that made Maya's heart swell. Ellie squeezed her hand, beaming with pride as their words were carried on hundreds of voices. The harmonies rose to the rafters, echoing off the newly painted walls. Maya saw Daniel in the back, phone forgotten in his hand, simply listening. He caught her eye and nodded, understanding exactly what was happening. This wasn't about record deals or streaming numbers. This was about community, about faith, about holding each other up. As the final chorus approached, Maya stepped back from the microphone, letting the audience carry the song. Ellie did the same, and together, they listened to their neighbors and friends sing the words they'd written at their kitchen table. The sound wrapped around them like a warm embrace, every voice adding its own color to the melody. James played the final chords, letting them ring out while the voices gradually faded. In that moment of silence before the applause, Maya looked at her daughter and saw tears shining in her eyes, happy tears, proud tears. They'd written this song hoping to encourage others, but hearing it transformed by hundreds of voices had given it new meaning. The applause, when it came, was thunderous, but Maya barely heard it. She was too busy marveling at how a simple song could bring so many people together, could make them forget their differences and join as one voice. This was what music was meant to do, not divide, not compete, but unite. This was the true gift, Maya realized. Not the record deal, not the viral videos, not even the personal success. It was this: standing on stage with her daughter, surrounded by their community, all of them singing the same words of hope and perseverance. In that moment, she understood that her voice had never really belonged to just Harriet, belonged to all of them, a gift meant to be shared. The morning sun painted golden stripes across Maya's kitchen floor through the Venetian blinds. The coffee maker gurgled and hissed, filling the small house with the rich aroma that made early mornings bearable. Maya leaned against the counter, still in her comfortable pajamas, watching as Ellie sat at their worn kitchen table, hunched over one of her beloved index cards. "What's today's riddle about?" Maya asked, reaching for 2 mugs from the cabinet. One was decorated with musical notes, a gift from Ruth, while the other bore Ellie's hand-painted flowers from art class. Ellie's pencil tapped against her chin. "I'm thinking something about music, but not too obvious." Her brow furrowed in concentration, a look that reminded Maya so much of herself when working on a new song. "Maybe about how notes float in the air but you can't catch them?" Maya poured the coffee, adding a splash of cream to hers and sliding Ellie's favorite hot chocolate across the table. "That's pretty deep for 7 a.m., baby girl." "Mrs. Johnson says the best writers start early," Ellie said, carefully printing words on her card. "Besides, I promised Jenny I'd have a new riddle for her at lunch today." Maya settled into the chair across from her daughter, breathing in the peaceful moment. The morning light caught the copper highlights in Ellie's dark curls, and Maya felt that familiar surge of love and gratitude. After everything they'd been through with the custody battle and Trevor's schemes, these quiet moments felt like precious gifts. "Speaking of school," Maya said, blowing on her coffee, "how's that science project coming along?" Ellie looked up from her card, eyes bright. "We're studying sound waves. Mr. Garcia let me bring in your song recording to show how different frequencies look on the computer. Did you know that when you hit that high note in Rivertown Hallelujah, it makes this amazing pattern?" "Is that so?" Maya chuckled. "Maybe we should write a song about science next." "Actually," Ellie set down her pencil and reached for her backpack, which was propped against the table leg. She pulled out a slightly crumpled piece of paper covered in her distinctive handwriting. "I started something during study hall yesterday. Want to hear it?" Maya's heart swelled. Ever since they'd written Hold Fast together, Ellie had been exploring her own songwriting. It wasn't about following in her mother's footsteps, it was about finding her own voice, her own way to touch people's hearts. "Always," Maya said softly. Ellie cleared her throat dramatically. "The world spins round like a vinyl record, every day a different song. Some notes rise up like morning birds, while others take all day long." She glanced up hopefully. "That's all I have so far." "That's beautiful, baby. I love how you connected nature with music." Maya reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "You've got a real gift for words." "Think we could work on it together later?" Ellie asked, tucking the paper back into her bag. "After my homework's done?" "You know it." Maya sipped her coffee, savoring the warmth. "How about we make that our Thursday night project? After choir practice?" Ellie nodded enthusiastically, then returned to her riddle card. The kitchen fell into comfortable silence, broken only by the scratch of Ellie's pencil and the distant sound of birds greeting the morning. Maya found herself reflecting on how much their lives had changed in the past months, yet how much had stayed beautifully the same. The diner's music clinic was thriving, bringing together people from all corners of their small town. The theater hosted regular concerts now, not just her own, but performances by local musicians who'd never had a proper stage before. And through it all, these morning moments with Ellie remained their anchor. "Got it," Ellie announced triumphantly, holding up her finished riddle card. "Want to hear it? Let's hear what you've got. You can't hold me in your hands, but I can hold your heart. I float on summer breezes, yet I'll never drift apart. When joy needs expressing, I'm the first to take the stage." "What am I?" Maya pretended to think hard, though she'd already guessed the answer. Could it be music? Ellie beamed. "You got it!" Though maybe it was too easy since, She gestured vaguely at their house, where sheet music and guitar picks had become as common as coffee mugs and throw pillows. A knock at the door interrupted their moment. 3 sharp raps Mrs. Hart's signature rhythm. Maya glanced at the clock, surprised to see it was already past 8. "Coming," she called, rising from her chair. Ellie was already halfway to the door, eager to greet Daniel's mother, who had become a regular visitor and beloved mentor to them both. The scent of fresh-baked muffins wafted in as Maya opened the door to find Mrs. Hart standing there, elegant as always in her pressed slacks and silk scarf, holding a basket covered with a checkered cloth. "Good morning, my dears," Mrs. Hart said warmly, stepping inside. "I hope I'm not too early, but these blueberry muffins insisted on being shared while they're still warm." "You're never too early," Maya assured her, taking the basket while Ellie hugged the older woman. "Come on, and coffee's fresh." Mrs. Hart followed them to the kitchen, her eyes twinkling with that look that Maya had come to recognize, the one that meant she had more than just muffins on her mind. The evening air wrapped around Maya and Ellie like a soft blanket as they sat on their front porch swing. The old wooden planks creaked gently beneath them, keeping time with their lazy swaying. Maya's weathered guitar, the same one she'd played in the diner all those years, rested comfortably in her lap, while Ellie curled up beside her, their shoulders touching. Down by the river, the setting sun painted the water in shades of orange and pink, its light dancing off the gentle ripples. The day's heat was finally breaking, giving way to the kind of summer evening that made their small town feel like heaven on earth. "Remember when we used to sit out here and count shooting stars?" Ellie asked, her head resting against Maya's arm. She'd grown taller over the past months, but some things hadn't changed, like how she still loved these quiet moments with her mama. Maya smiled, her fingers absently strumming soft chords. "Those were some of my favorite nights," she said. "Just you and me, making wishes." "And eating Ruth's chocolate chip cookies," Ellie added with a grin. "Even when we were supposed to be saving them for tomorrow." A warm breeze rustled through the climbing roses Mrs. Hart had helped them plant along the porch railing. Their sweet fragrance mingled with the earthy smell of the river, creating the perfect backdrop for songwriting. "You know what I love most about our porch?" Maya asked, adjusting a guitar string. "It's like our own little stage, but without all the pressure. Just us and the river for an audience." Ellie nodded, watching a pair of cardinals flit between the rose bushes. "And sometimes Mrs. Peterson next door," she giggled. "She always opens her window when you start playing." "Well, she did bring us that amazing peach cobbler last week," Maya said, chuckling. "I suppose that makes her our most loyal fan." The sound of children's laughter drifted up from the riverbank where several families were enjoying the last bits of daylight. Maya watched as a mother pushed her little girl on the riverside swing, the child's joy echoing across the water. It reminded her of all those evenings she'd spent with Ellie at that same spot, back when their dreams seemed as distant as the stars they'd wished upon. "I've been thinking about a new song," Maya said, her fingers finding their way to familiar chord progressions. "Something about these moments, about how sometimes the smallest things turn out to be the biggest blessings." Ellie sat up straighter, her eyes brightening. She'd become quite the songwriter herself lately, her natural gift for riddles translating beautifully into lyrics. Like how singing "His Eye is on the Sparrow" that morning changed everything. "Exactly like that," Maya agreed, smiling at her daughter's insight. but also about all the little moments that came after Ruth's encouragement, Mrs. Hart's stories, the whole town coming together to help restore the theater. And don't forget about Front Porch Fridays, Ellie added enthusiastically. Yesterday, I saw old Mr. Jenkins actually smiling while he learned to play the tambourine. Maya laughed, the memory warming her heart. The music program had brought out sides of their neighbors they'd never seen before. Who knew our little town had so much rhythm hiding under the surface? The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across their porch. A chorus of crickets began their evening song, Nature's Own Backup Band. Maya adjusted her guitar strap, feeling that familiar stirring in her soul, the one that always came just before a new song was born. "You've got that look, Mama," Ellie observed, sitting up straighter. She knew that expression well, had seen it countless times before some of their best songs came to life. Maya's fingers found their place on the fretboard, testing out a gentle melody. The notes floated out across their front yard, mingling with the evening air. It was amazing how different it felt now, playing on their porch, compared to those uncertain days before Daniel walked into the diner. The music was the same, but the weight of worry that used to press down on her shoulders had lifted. "Sometimes I think about how scared I was to take that first step," Maya said softly, continuing to play. "But you never doubted for a second, did you?" Ellie shook her head, her eyes reflecting the last rays of sunlight. "I always knew God gave you that voice for a reason, Mama. I just didn't know exactly what it was yet." The truth of those words settled over them like a blessing. Maya thought about all the letters they'd received, stories of hope and healing from people who'd found comfort in her songs. She thought about the music clinic, about Ruth's proud smile every time a new student mastered their first chord, about Mrs. Hart's weekly visits with fresh ideas and warm encouragement. "Ready to help your mama with another one?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Ellie had become her favorite co-writer, her young heart often finding the perfect words when Maya's own thoughts got tangled. The porch swing creaked as Ellie shifted closer, her eyes bright with excitement. The last sliver of sun painted the river in golden light, a perfect backdrop for creating something new. Maya felt that familiar spark of inspiration, the one that had led to Rivertown Hallelujah and Hold Fast. Her fingers found the first chord, a warm, hopeful sound that seemed to capture everything in her heart. She looked at Ellie, seeing all their shared dreams reflected in her daughter's smile. "Let's see where this one takes us," Maya said, beginning to play. "What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next." If you enjoyed the story of Maya Brooks, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.